He left his mother for money, but he realized too late that love is the only wealth that lasts forever. Once upon a time in a city where skyscrapers touched the clouds and glass buildings gleamed like jewels, there lived a frail yet resilient woman. Her name was Eleanor, and she worked as a cleaner, scrubbing floors and polishing windows to make ends meet. Despite the physical toll her job took on her aging body, she never complained. Her worn hands bore silent witness to years of hard work, each wrinkle and scar telling a tale of resilience and devotion. Her son, Marco, had always been her motivation. Seeing him grow up healthy and happy gave her purpose. Even when her fingers bled from harsh detergents or her back buckled under the weight of heavy buckets, she pressed on. She dreamed of a different life for him, one free from the struggles she endured. Years flew by like birds on high winds, and Marco grew up before his mother's adoring eyes. He excelled in school, winning awards for his intelligence and kindness. Eleanor sewed his torn school uniforms with trembling hands, her only wish that he should always have what he needed. She packed his lunches even when she went hungry, whispering stories of bravery and hope as she tucked him in at night. "Don't worry, my love," she would say, her voice raspy with fatigue yet filled with affection. "One day you'll have a life better than this. You'll soar higher than any bird." But Marco was growing up, and his eyes were beginning to see beyond their small apartment and his mother's fading beauty. He started noticing the cracks in their home, the worn patches on his clothes, and the other kids teasing him about his worn shoes. One day, a new girl joined his class. Isabella was beautiful and confident, her laughter echoing like wind chimes in a summer breeze. She wore exquisite dresses and carried a leather bag that smelled faintly of vanilla. Marco found himself drawn to her, wanting to be part of her world. Soon, he began spending more time with her and her family. They took him to fancy restaurants with white tablecloths and introduced him to a lifestyle he had only dreamed of. Marco liked Isabella, yes, but he also craved the admiration he received from her wealthy family. They showered him with compliments, praising his intelligence and charm. For the first time, he felt a sense of belonging, of being valued for more than just his mother's loving son. As months passed, Marco changed. He started dressing in designer clothes, using expensive cologne, and talking about expanding his business one day. Eleanor noticed these changes, but when she tried to talk to Marco about it, he would become distant. His eyes filled with a coldness that pierced her heart. "Mom, we need to talk," he would say, his tone sharp and clipped. "I'm not the boy you carried in your arms all those years ago. I'm a young man now with ambitions." One day, Eleanor came home to find Marco waiting for her. He held a stack of papers in his hand, his face grim. "Mom, I need you to sign these." Eleanor knew instinctively what the papers were. It was the deed to their small house, their only possession. "Marco, why?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why do you need my signature?" Marco hesitated. "It's better if the house is in my name. I have to show my future in-laws that I'm independent." Eleanor's heart shattered. She looked at the house around her, its walls filled with memories, its garden holding the echoes of her son's laughter. Was this, too, to be sacrificed on the altar of Marco's ambition? That night, Eleanor did not sleep. She sat by the window, watching the city lights twinkle like fallen stars. She thought of Marco, his face pale and drawn under the harsh lights of their apartment building. He had changed so much since meeting Isabella. Eleanor sighed. She understood that Marco was chasing his dreams, but couldn't help but mourn the loss of the boy she once knew. The next morning, she woke up with a start. The sun was streaming through the window, painting stripes of gold on the floor. She had slept, but not enough to erase the worry etched on her heart. Eleanor knew she had to do something. She couldn't just sit around waiting for Marco to come to his senses. Eleanor decided to visit Isabella's family. She had never met them, but she hoped they might understand her concerns for Marco. When she arrived at their doorstep, though, her hopes plummeted. Marco's father and brother greeted her, their faces cold and unwelcoming. They led her into a lavish living room, its grandeur making Eleanor feel even smaller and more insignificant than she already did. "You must be Marco's mother," the father said finally, his voice like ice. "We've heard so much about you." Eleanor forced a smile. "I'm here because I'm worried about Marco. He seems unhappy lately." "Oh, it's just a phase." The father dismissed her concern. "He'll grow out of it." Eleanor wanted to argue, to tell them how Marco had changed, how his grades had slipped and his laughter had faded. But as she looked into their cold, uncaring eyes, she knew it was pointless. These people cared about only one thing, money, and she suspected that Isabella was not the girl Marco had fallen in love with either. Months went by, and Eleanor watched helplessly as her son became a stranger. He spent less and less time at home, and when he did, he was absorbed in his phone, his face illuminated by the airy glow of the screen. The once vibrant young man had been replaced by someone distant, his eyes haunted by a sadness that mirrored her own. Eleanor tried reaching out to him, but Marco would brush her off, muttering about how out of touch she was. "Mom, you just don't understand my world," he would say, his voice echoing with disdain. Then one day, Marco came home with Isabella. Eleanor opened the door, and their faces were grim. "Mom, I have something to tell you," Marco began, his voice tight. "Isabella and we're getting married." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. She wanted to be happy for her son, but how could she be when their relationship seemed so strained? Eleanor swallowed her disappointment and forced a smile. "Of course, I'm happy for you, Marco. When is the wedding?" "In 3 weeks," Isabella said, her eyes flashing with triumph. Eleanor saw it, the glint of victory in those eyes. She knew that Isabella had come to claim her son, not out of love, but for what he could offer her. The wedding day arrived, a blur of white dresses, expensive gifts, and forced smiles. Eleanor stood by her son as he exchanged vows with Isabella, her heart aching with a sadness that threatened to consume her. As the ceremony ended and the guests began congratulating them, Eleanor found herself alone in a corner. She watched Marco and Isabella laughing and talking animatedly, and a bitter taste filled her mouth. She realized then that her son was gone, replaced by someone who cared only for money and status. With a sigh, she wiped a stray tear from her cheek and turned to leave. Marco and Isabella's marriage was everything Eleanor had feared it would be. Marco quickly rose in Isabella's father's company, climbing the corporate ladder with astonishing speed. While Marco thrived, his mother was forgotten. He rarely called her anymore, and when he did, it was usually to ask for money. Eleanor, once a strong, proud woman, found herself trapped in a web of despair. She grew weaker with each passing day, not just in body, but also in spirit. The sparkle in her eyes dimmed, replaced by a haunting emptiness. One day, Eleanor fell ill. She lay in bed, her body racked with coughs, her mind filled with worry for her son. She knew she was dying, and her thoughts were a jumble of fear and regret. She kept replaying Marco's words in her head, his accusations, his demands. Had she been too hard on him? Was this her fault? Eleanor didn't know. The truth was, she had given her life to her son, and now he didn't even know she existed. When Marco finally visited, it was too late. His mother was gone, leaving him with a mountain of regret and a lifetime of sorrow. As Eleanor breathed her last breath, she whispered one final prayer, a prayer for her son. "Oh, Marco, I loved you with all my heart. I hope you find peace, my son." Little did she know that her death would shake Marco to his core, shattering the illusion of success he had so carefully crafted. He would spend the rest of his life haunted by the memory of his mother, the one person who had truly loved him, and he would carry the burden of that regret until his dying day.